Distinguished guests, we would like to welcome you all to the 23rd World Energy Congress. Before moving on to the keynote speeches, we would like to introduce our video. We will play the video that will set the scene for today and highlight the key topics of the discussions. Let's watch the video now.
(600 BC), Thales of Miletus discovers static electricity. 1800, Alessandro Volta invents the battery. 1882, the first thermal power stations open. 1973, the oil crash. 2009, solar prices start to plummet. 2015, at COP21, 195 countries agree to significantly curb emissions. Welcome to the 23rd World Energy Congress, here in Istanbul. Since we last met in 2013, a new reality has emerged. This Congress takes place at a unique time for the energy sector, a time of grand transition. The World Energy Council has been at the forefront of the debate for 93 years, and together with you, governments, corporations, academia, NGOs and energy stakeholders, we meet to embrace a new frontier. Productivity will be the main driver of economic growth and well-being by 2060. It will determine the scope of the revolution experienced by the energy sector and open a golden age for new energy technologies. There will be greater diversity in resources and technologies, leading to smarter systems and greater choice for producers and consumers. The speed of policy and technology innovation will define winners and losers. How can we embrace these choices and benefit from these opportunities? The program today will focus on visions and scenarios for the future. Our three new scenarios leading up to 2060 present significant choices for the energy sector as it responds to the grand transition. In our decentralized, market-driven modern jazz scenario, technology innovation takes center stage, resulting in new and more effective business models. Access to energy for all by 2060, but missing our COP21 objectives without a carbon price signal. Our orchestrated, unfinished symphony scenario requires exceptional levels of commitment and investment to focus on providing exit strategies from fossil fuels and aging infrastructure, getting closest to achieving our climate change targets and mitigating the social and economic impacts. Our third scenario, Hard Rock, sees each country choosing their own energy path. Growth will be slower, inequality more prevalent, and climate change impacts will be greater. But there will be many more local opportunities. Underlying these scenarios, the reality is that the energy sector is changing fast, creating more risks but also opportunities. To succeed, we need to innovate. The old way is not an option. Embracing these new frontiers, our agenda today includes Scenarios 2060, the grand transition, China's energy outlook to 2060, Global Renewables Update, the reality of scaling up, Tomorrow's nuclear and today's realities, Technology Innovation Frontiers, the triple transition embracing shifting frontiers. These sessions provide tools to balance the energy trilemma, leading to secure, environmentally sustainable and affordable energy. More than ever, discussions at this year's Congress will shape our energy future. Welcome to the 23rd World Energy Congress.
And today's theme is Vision and Scenarios for the Future, as it's mentioned in the video. I would like to invite keynote speakers to the stage. Khalid al-Falih, Minister of Energy, Industry and Mineral Resources from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I would like to invite Khalid al-Falih to the stage for his speech. Welcome, Mr. Khalid. And Marie-José Nadeau, Chair of World Energy Council from Canada. Welcome, Ms. Nadeau. And I would like to invite our moderator, John Defterios, Anchor and Global Emerging Markets Editor of CNN from United Arab Emirates. Welcome, Mr. Defterios, and the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the opening session of the World Energy Congress 2016. We meet in Istanbul at a time of transition and change in the energy sector, with major impacts on the way we view energy and the way the energy sector does business. No country, no company, no consumer will be unaffected by the changes that we are set to witness. Indeed, they have already started. We call this the grand energy transition. It's a topic that we'll discuss time and time again over the next 4 days. Per capita energy demand, once on an ever-rising trajectory, is finally set to peak. Renewable energy will gain an increasing market share, and hydrocarbons will come under pressure, especially those in high-cost regions. In a post-COP world, governments will try to adapt their policies in a way that is likely to put more emphasis on the environmental pillar of the energy trilemma. Countries will struggle to achieve balanced energy policies in which environmental commitments go hand in hand with the need to secure improved energy access and improved energy security. In parallel, technology is changing the way we use energy and is helping consumers rationalize their choices. Smart grids, digitalization, and improved energy storage will all help optimize energy production and use. Simply put, none of us can continue business as usual. Those who do not adapt will eventually lose us. If I were to use 2 words that would describe the best what you're about to witness over the next 4 days, is change, of course, you've heard that, but I would say change and velocity. How rapidly can we adapt to what we will see happening in our business and government environments? For major oil producing countries, the future is clearly challenging, especially those in the midst of a drive towards economic diversification and industrialization. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome the Congress's first keynote speaker, His Excellency Khalid al-Falih, Minister of Energy, Industry, and Mineral Resources of Saudi Arabia, a country that recently announced its own transformation plan. Excellency, I now leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and herkese günaydın. I would like to thank the World Energy Council, Madame Marie-José Nadeau, and Dr. Christophe Fry for the opportunity to address this great Congress today. This week's event extends, of course, a 92-year tradition of excellence in discussing and debating the world's most pressing energy challenges. And I'm honored to be with you this morning. I would also like to thank the Republic of Turkey and the majestic city of Istanbul for its gracious hospitality, which is a hallmark of this great nation and great people. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no more appropriate location for us to convene. Not only is Turkey a significant energy player in its own right, but it's also an indispensable gateway linking the energy-rich regions of the Middle East, Central Asia, and Russia to energy-thirsty Europe. Turkey's prominent role in the world's geopolitical scene and its emerging powerful economy is also undeniable. And I believe nobody summed it better than Napoleon, who once said, if the earth was a single state, Istanbul would be its capital. In my remarks today, I will first share some thoughts on the energy transformation and the journey to an optimal energy future, putting it in a historical context. Then I will set out 4 key factors that, in my view, will be critical in achieving that desired change. And lastly, I will try to give you a flavor for our Saudi Vision 2030 that calls for exciting changes in the kingdom, including within the energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, before we march boldly into the future, we should look at the past. The global energy industry has always embraced new frontiers. The history of energy is a story of evolution, change, and constant innovation. When Napoleon spoke about Istanbul, the pre-industrial world ran largely on wood, wind, water, meaning hydro, and coal. Then, over the past century, came the rise of oil and natural gas, nuclear power, modern renewables, and other alternative energy sources. But despite the passage of time and the falling share of coal and biomass in the global energy mix in percentage terms, their consumption in absolute value terms has continued to rise. This trajectory suggests that it takes generations to transform the vast and complex global energy system. It's not something you could do overnight with the flip of a switch. Looking back at a shorter period, for the last quarter of a century, the industry has supplied 60% more energy to help meet the needs of a growing population and rising living standards, especially in the developing world. And through a combination of technological innovation, efficiency measures, policy and regulation, and global cooperation, we have been able to reduce energy and carbon intensities vis-à-vis gross domestic product by up to 30%, which has reduced that demand from what it would have otherwise been. We can take pride in these achievements, both being able to supply that significantly more energy and being able to do it more sustainably and in a more environmentally acceptable manner. And we should draw confidence and indeed inspiration from them as we look ahead to the challenges and the frontiers that we're trying to embrace. Let me also acknowledge that the future challenges are exponentially larger, more complex, more intractable, and faster moving than the ones I have just described of the past. There are various reasons for this, such as the relatively early development stage of alternative energy sources and the various hurdles they face, including storage, of course. Also, the rising world population, uneven growth and living standards in different regions of the world, and of course, the pressing expectations from younger populations around the world for more transparency, more sustainability, and better governance standards. To address these challenges, the industry, us in this room and our colleagues, must be ambitious, but at the same time, our approach must be pragmatic, considering the potentially bumpy road ahead. In all likelihood, the coming energy transformation will not be a linear, and there will be inevitably setbacks along with the fantastic successes we're counting on making. But let me hasten to add that encountering challenges doesn't mean we give up. Rather, we need to build flexibility in our plans while moving ahead with determination. Ladies and gentlemen, in my view, there are 4 key factors that are critical to successfully transforming the global energy system and transitioning from the present to the future while minimizing risks. First, the climate change imperative that is driving the transformation. It is a key. It is encouraging to note that the Paris Agreement has achieved the threshold for entry into force just last week, and Saudi Arabia is determined to see it implemented. In fact, we're working hard on our environmental plan and expect to ratify the agreement before the Marrakesh meeting in November. However, as the world moves beyond debate to implementation, we need to skillfully navigate the uncharted waters of this transition to ensure we still deliver on the 4 A's of energy security. This is availability, accessibility, affordability, and accessibility. And when I talk about these 4 A's, I am basically referring to uninterrupted supply of affordable energy to the populations around the world and the various economies, while minimizing environmental impact. I believe the WEC refers to it as the trilemma. This leads me, ladies and gentlemen, to my second point. To ensure availability of reliable and sufficient supplies of energy during the transition period, we all must recognize that we need the continued use and investment in all energy sources, especially oil and gas, which is the core energy source today. And we should make timely investment in their development. And I am concerned about all the talk about stranded resources, coupled with the view of abundant oil and the low oil prices of recent time, pulling away investment that is needed for the continued growth of demand that we anticipate. Third, we need to continue pushing the envelope of technological advancements and achieve real breakthroughs, without which the vision for energy transformation will not become a reality. And I can give you some examples, but there are many around the industry. In Saudi Aramco, we're working on our own research as well as in collaboration with the auto industry to provide new and dramatically different fuel engine combinations that will increase efficiency in automobiles by an order of magnitude. We're also looking at carbon capture and conversion into useful applications that will turn what is otherwise a waste into a wealth-creating industry. And these at the early stage, but we're confident that within years and not decades, they will be, applications will emerge. Fourth and last is the fact that this energy transformation requires a high degree of predictability in policy and regulation among countries and across markets that are consistent with national priorities and circumstances. To ensure universal energy access for all, the UN Sustainable Development Goals adopted last year call for fighting energy poverty and inequalities to ensure no one is left behind. Along similar lines, the G20 in August has adopted energy access action plans and a cleaner energy future, focusing on energy efficiency and strengthening collaboration. As G20 consumes over 80% of global energy, It can play a significant role in expanding access to energy by continuously improving its energy efficiency of its member countries. In addition to these factors, an overarching goal should be the continued systematic and sustained collaboration among international institutions, policymakers and regulators, and producers and consumers of various forms of energy to achieve common objectives. And of course, the WEC plays a part as a venue for these kind of collaborations and meetings and networking that is so key to our success. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the final part of my talk here today, a quick look at the Saudi Vision 2030, as referred to by Madame Nadeau. The vision will lead to a stronger, more robust, globally competitive, and more sustainable Saudi Arabia. This will be achieved through a comprehensive set of reforms, greater economic diversification, intensive capacity building, and job creation efforts, all of which will be underpinned by substantive localization and privatization programs. Just to give you a feel for the magnitude of this program, one activity, which is the public listing of Saudi Aramco, and although the share that will be listed will be small, it will be by far the largest IPO in history. Also, in your area of interest, about 65 gigawatts of power generation will be privatized in the next couple of years, along with other state-owned assets that the government is currently putting in its plans. Helped by these privatizations, the asset portfolio of our Sovereign Wealth Fund, the PIF, will approach $2 trillion and will become the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. The vision is also activating in the kingdom many of the energy-related ideas I have outlined and calls for continuing to build upon the three existing pillars of our economy, namely oil and gas, chemicals, and mining. In the area of oil and gas, we are continuing to invest in our oil production capacity to be ready for the inevitable rise in demand that we expect. This is, after all, a cyclical business. It is also underpinned by our realization of the important role that reliable petroleum supplies play in the global economic growth and stability, and the kingdom is committed to its role as the one with the largest share of the world's spare capacity to ensure we step in and provide the supplies when needed. We're also stepping up investments in conventional and unconventional gas, whose production will be expanded by almost 50% to 18 billion standard cubic feet per day by 2020, in 4 years. Clean gas will comprise more than 70% of our utilities fuel mix. This is amongst the highest in the world. Beyond this, we're taking a range of energy efficiency measures while also taking steps to turn the kingdom into a global solar energy powerhouse with an initial target of about 10 gigawatts in 5 years, as part of fulfilling our COP21 commitments, which I referred to earlier. And of course, beyond this 10 gigawatts of renewables, solar and wind, which is phase one of a long-term introduction of renewables, we're also intent in a gradual and deliberate way of introducing nuclear energy for power generation in the kingdom. The wide-ranging and forward-looking programs of the vision mean enormous business opportunities for global enterprises. So I invite each of you to learn more about our vision and national transformation program understand the course we have charted for a more prosperous future for Saudi Arabia, and explore the many economic and commercial opportunities we have on offer, including many in the segments of energy business represented today. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for generations, the global energy industry has been remarkably successful in adapting and changing in the face of fresh challenges and emerging opportunities. Today, we must strengthen our efforts and build flexibility to achieve universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy to the planet's 7 billion people. And of course, we should not forget about the 2 billion additional people that will be joining this population by 2040. The key to the successful transformation, therefore, lies in a combination of ambition and pragmatism and balancing the climate change with the economic and energy priorities of this population. Working together and employing the ingenuity that has always characterized our industry, I am confident our generation will succeed, as did our predecessors, providing the future generations with a more robust, responsible, and reliable global energy system for all. Thank you, and tashakkur idrim.
Before you sit down, just on a lighter note, because you gave a very intense speech there, Minister of Energy, Minister of Industry, Minister of Minerals, right? Chairman of Saudi Aramco, aiming for a $2 trillion IPO in 2018, the 2030 plan, which is an amazing transformation for the kingdom, and privatization to get the private sector up to 60%, create 500,000 jobs by 2020, or just past that level. I'm kind of curious what you do on your free time these days. Do you have any free time? Even the political JASTA bill that survived in Congress and survived the veto here, what are you doing now? Do you have any spare time at all with this sort of ambitious plan ahead for the kingdom?
On top of it all, I have to deal with John Defterius in every venue I go to. He chases me. He was in Davos, in Vienna for the OPEC meeting, and here we are today in Algiers.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, you know, I probably will give you a weighting of 30% in my portfolio.
Let's thank the minister and give him a nice round of applause for his keynote.
Thank you, thank you.
And secondarily, for your openness, because you could have given your keynote and got back into the audience and said, I need to go to my bilateral meetings, but you afforded us 10 to 12 minutes here for a conversation. And I want to just roll back the clock, if I may here, to the June meeting of OPEC in Vienna. And I had the first interview with you in that role of minister. And you said at that time you were confident we could see $60 a barrel by the close of 2016. We're not there yet, but we're in the final quarter. What is the scenario that gets us to $60 a barrel before we close out the year, Minister?
Well, I first of all want to be clear. I am not in the business of determining what the price is or what it should be. I've said it then, and I say it today, that prices of any commodity is a variable that only markets determine, and markets have many factors that are at play at any one point of time. The most, of course, important factors are supply and demand. And I think the role of responsible producers around the world, Saudi Arabia consider ourselves to be the leading one, is to try to balance supply and demand in a very in a very responsible way that is conducive to the interests of all, interests of producers, interests of consumers, make sure the industry is healthy, that we're investing, and that we have less oscillations and variability in prices that doesn't allow people to plan appropriately. And at that time, the context of that discussion, which is still the context that I like to talk about, is where are we on supply-demand rebalancing? And I spoke in June about the rapidly emerging rebalancing, and the fact that I was seeing the convergence of supply and demand from a very clear divergence in 2014, where supply from one region alone, North America, was growing much faster than global demand, which fueled by higher prices. And demand, of course, was crimped by also the same factor, higher prices. And OPEC made its decisions not to intervene because it was a long-term structural divergence. And in June, I said that divergence has been reversed, and now we're seeing the convergence of supply and demand, and I was speaking notionally that it's not unthinkable. I was not confident. I'm never confident about where the price is going to be. I said it's not unthinkable that we could see $60 by year end. We're in October. We've moved from 40s to 50s. God knows where we're going to be by year end. But my eyes are not on the price. The Minister of Finance eyes are on the price. My eyes are on supply and demand. I look at inventories, global inventories. I look at the reliable data from the US. I talk to people like Fatih Birol about how do they see it from a consumer perspective. I talk to major industrial countries. I talk to major developing economies. And I make sure that we calibrate, both within Saudi Arabia, within our colleagues in OPEC and non-OPEC producer, our decisions, our signals, so that we balance the interests of all of these stakeholders. And most importantly, the interests of the billions of people around the world who are counting to wake up in the morning and turn on the lights and switch their cars on or get on their public transport system and being able to build a life for their families. And energy is a key part of it. And it's a key barometer that also sets other industries, whether it's other commodities or even manufacturing and services and airlines. So we take that job very seriously and that responsibility. And I don't want to shrink it to an issue of targeting a single price for the purpose of maximizing or optimizing the income of Saudi Arabia or other producing countries.
Okay. Just in the essence of time, I think we should be careful with our length, only because I could stay up here for a half hour with you. But I want to follow up on one point you brought up here. Less than 2 years ago, Saudi Arabia was in an all-out battle for market share. And in fact, your predecessor said Saudi Arabia would never cut again. And now we have the Algiers plan. Has OPEC categorically shifted to managing market supply, and Saudi Arabia is not in a fight solely for market share today?
OPEC as its mission and its objective is clear. It's in its bylaws. But we've always said that supply and demand has two factors. I just mentioned it. Market forces and investment flows by the end. We're only a third of global supply. And the other factor is reasonable coordinated action, preferably with non-OPEC. If we had decided never to get involved in moderating supply-demand imbalances, we wouldn't waste the time of going to OPEC meetings. Obviously, we continue to believe on the important role of OPEC to coordinate these decisions. But there is a time for everything. Central bankers meet regularly, twice a year, globally, and agree when is the time for easing, when is the time for restricting money supply into the financial systems. Likewise, just like the money through interest rates and quantitative easing and other measures that central bankers do in coordination with each other and with the IMF as a central planning and coordination agency. Oil is just as important to the global economy, and OPEC has that role so yes, I think it's time to do something different than we were faced with in 2014. It's a very gentle, sort of hand on the wheel. We're not doing anything dramatic, different, and I think the market forces have shifted significantly between 2014 and now.
You've talked about other producers. You have an energy cooperation agreement with Russia signed at the G20 meeting just a short time ago. Should this energy cooperation agreement with Russia go beyond them freezing at over 11 million barrels a day? What's the purpose of that agreement if you don't get cooperation to rebalance the market?
That will be left to the two of us to discuss. I am meeting with my colleague, Minister Novak, here in Istanbul in the next couple of days. We will discuss what their reaction to what has happened in Algiers. We have a technical coordination committee that will meet in a couple of weeks between the two groups to look at supply demand and the role of that cooperation agreement in doing exactly what I described today. And I look forward to Russia continuing to play a constructive role on the global energy stage.
Let me phrase it a different way here, not single out Russia. Russia, Azerbaijan, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, non-OPEC players here, should they be at the table in the effort to rebalance the market here, not just leave it to OPEC?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And many of them have indicated eagerness to work with us. I think in the next few weeks, as OPEC defines its own implementation plan, which is still to be done, that will be communicated to the non-OPEC producers, who have been, quite frankly, working diligently with us since the beginning of the year, before my time as minister. His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Sada, is here. He is the current president of OPEC. He played a great role in Doha, convening this coalition that emerged between OPEC and non-OPEC. And I think it's going to continue to play a role in the next couple of months.
Could we have it by the next major meeting in Vienna, November 30th, to have a complete package stitched together?
I am optimistic we can.
And should OPEC be a little bit more ambitious? We went with a band of 32.5 to 33 million barrels a day. Do you have a preference to be closer to 32.5 and not be so tentative in the market?
I think the reason we say the range, of course, is other producers within OPEC who have been out of the market may also be coming back. We have Libya increasing its production, Nigeria also. Both of them have had unfortunate setbacks for internal reasons. So as they come back, we want to be able to make sure the ceiling can accommodate them. So that's a backdrop for why the range. Also, we're calibrating. I mean, I think with all of the great data and analysts, there's still not 100% clarity on where demand is, where supply is. So we're hoping by November, we will know more about what's happening outside OPEC, what is happening in North America, what is happening in China, what is happening in Mexico. There are many areas that are declining with lower prices faster than we thought, and quite frankly, faster than we hoped. And so I think OPEC needs to make sure that we don't crimp too tightly and create a shock to the market. Like I said, we want to be very responsible. The prices have dropped too low. That has impacted investment. Many companies are hurting. Many countries are hurting. That needs to be relieved. But at the same time, we don't want to give the market the opposite signal and shock markets into prices that could be harmful. So we want to be flexible as this committee of experts meets amongst OPEC members, and we meet with our colleagues from non-OPEC. We're hopeful that we will find that right equilibrium.
Isn't it the political reality by 2018, for purposes of evaluation for Saudi Aramco, that you need $70 a barrel because of your proven reserves? Isn't that the desired level by 2018 for political realities at home?
Well, I can tell you with certainty, John, it's not what's driving our policy on production or collaboration with producers. The kingdom will be prepared to deal with whatever price may emerge. We have economic and fiscal plans to deal with a very low price scenario. a moderate price scenario, but if prices rise higher than currently predicted, certainly they will allow us to do more and faster things within our economic transformation plans. But the Kingdom is intent, through the Vision 2030 I described, to accelerate the diversification, to build other economic engines, to drive our economy beyond oil and gas, and this will be done with or without a recovery in prices.
This is a very steep transition for the Saudi people. You're going to struggle to grow 1 to 1.5% in 2016. Can society deal with that level of transition from 6% growth down to 1%? Is it too painful and too ambitious to push through this 2030 plan?
Well, as long as that transition is used to create more productivity and more, economic gain, I think the pain is okay. As the adage always says, no pain, no gain. And we did grow a little fat around the belly. We were complacent, primarily because of the very high
oil.
Yeah, $100 to $110 oil. So I think the transition, although it is slowing down the economy at the top, it also has many positive components. It has allowed the government and many institutions, even Saudi Aramco, where I used to, to work as the CEO, to look inside the house and see, are there opportunities to be more efficient? Are there opportunities to get more productivity for our reals or our dollars? And this is happening as we speak, and fueled by the very high reserves that we have. The Kingdom enjoys the third largest level of international fiscal balances. We're able to invest. We're able to address any fiscal deficits that we have, but we're also investing in building this economic sector. I'm also the chairman of Ma'aden, the mining company. We're building multiple value chains in the mineral sector, and it is creating jobs. It's creating investment opportunities.
So the message is there's no reason to panic about Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
And this contraction, and even the $100 billion cash burn every year.
No, there is no reason to panic. We essentially have one of the lowest debt on our balance sheet, which is even not healthy from a structure of our balance sheet. So we're reconstructing our balance sheet, freeing up some of that equity on the balance sheet to be invested for productive uses, raising debt. We have a bond offering globally in dollars that is going to take place. We've already had a syndicated loan, so raising debt needs to happen anyway, no matter what the oil prices are. And I talked about the reserve. There is also a lot of slack in the Kingdom that if it's unleashed and if it's deployed properly, I think the economy will resume growth in 2017 at very healthy levels.
Final question here, and it's a theme for the World Energy Council 2016 Congress. 5 years ago, we were talking about peak oil, a shortage of finding new reserves. Now we're talking about peak demand for energy in 2030. You touched upon it in your speech, but are you a believer that we could be having stranded oil reserves sitting in Saudi Arabia by 2030?
The short answer is no. I don't believe that we will ever have stranded resources. But I also believe that demand for oil will ultimately peak. The question is when and at what level. And I talked about the flexibility, and I talked about the investment. And in Saudi Arabia, we're going to be able to adjust. We think it will be peaking later than, the common dates that are being thrown around. But if it does happen around those dates, because we're building all of these multiple engines for the economy, and we're planning for, an economy beyond oil, we'll be ready for it. So we've got the scenarios, we've got the plans, we're working diligently to adjust to whatever scenarios the World Energy Congress will be, telling us in their presentations today.
Good. Thanks for taking all the questions. I appreciate it. Nice round of applause for His Excellency Khalid al-Falih of Saudi Arabia. Always a pleasure. Nice to meet you. We're just going to take a brief 5-minute break just to reset the podium here. We have an excellent panel pending, which will be an hour long, called The Grand Transition, which covers some of the issues I had with His Excellency. Just pause for 5 minutes. We'll get the chairs reset, and we'll be back on the stage. Thanks again.